Hello, welcome.
How are we all enjoying Cape Con 2023?
Woo!
That was kind of low energy. Can we do that
come
again?
on.
How are we enjoying Cape Con 2023? Let's get it up for Greg Baldwin.
All right, there we go, there we go.
Now we got him warmed up.
Now we got it.
I like your shoes, man. They're cool.
Those are cool shoes.
Hey, you know what? I realized at a very early age that I wasn't going to go far in life based on my looks, so I decided to dress them up a little bit, you know? It seems to be working.
You know,
Got them kicks.
Everybody likes a sharp-dressed man.
Yeah, so how are you liking Cape Girardeau so far?
This is my first time in Missouri. And I got to see the art. First of all, I got to see the art.
You got to see the arch.
I got to see the arch, which was cool.
The gateway to the west.
Because it's such it's like seeing the Empire State Building or the Hollywood sign, you know, it's something, wow, look, there it is. I've heard about that all my life. And Missouri is so lovely. The drive from here to St. Louis, it's really cool when someplace looks the way you expect it's going to look. And I've never been here before, so it's very green and rolling. It has a little more, everything, in the West, everything seems newer. You can always tell when you're back east a little bit because everything's just a little older. And it's beautiful, that magnificent river that, you know, I wish I had more time. The problem is, when I come out to these things, generally I'm an old guy, I'm tired, and it's like, I want to go back to my bed tonight.
Right.
As much as I'd like to go up to the top of the St. Louis Arch, my own arches are hurting. I need to go, you know. I need to go sit in my bed. I'm 63. I was 63 2 weeks ago.
Well, happy birthday.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Holding on for 64. I can do it, I can do it.
Well, hopefully you have a long life after that.
Hopefully, you know.
You voiced some of our favorite characters, and I can't imagine that any of us wants to give you up anytime soon.
You know what? I as much as I very much look forward, I never met Mako Arumatsu. And I look forward to meeting him, but not anytime soon. You know, if it's okay, Mako, we'll delay that for just a bit.
Well, I imagine he'll be happy to see you.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah.
The worst thing would be, you sounded nothing like me. Why did they give you the job? You're horrible. You suck. Hopefully he doesn't say that. You know. That's how I'll know if I'm in heaven or hell. Based on Mako's reaction to me. You know.
I read somewhere that you actually learned to imitate Mako by an album.
I did. Oddly enough, the reason I'm sitting here, believe it or not, if you know anything about musicals and you've ever heard of Stephen Sondheim, I think he passed away about 2 years ago, and he was like considered the preeminent composer of American musicals. And we can thank Stephen Sondheim for this. I knew I wanted to be an actor from the time I was 10 years old. And from that point on, I wanted, for all of my birthdays or Christmas, I just wanted vinyl albums of Broadway shows. And it was my 17th birthday, and my parents gave me the record album for a show called Pacific Overtures, starring Mako Arumatsu. And like you do, I mean, I fell in love with this musical. It's still my favorite Sondheim musical. I could sing the entire score for you. And in fact, I will. So sit down, it's going to be a little while. We're going to do this. Nippon, the floating kingdom. But I would sing along with it, and not realizing that 2006, all these years later, Mako would pass away, and they were looking for someone that could do a voice match. And I had been working on a voice match for 30 years, and I didn't know it. So, as Iroh says, destiny is a funny thing. You never know how things are going to work out. And, you know, I'm here living proof destiny is a very, very funny thing.
That's incredible.
No, and actually, as a coda, the cool thing is, much later, after I had been cast as Iroh, and an actor that I particularly admired had passed away, Albert Finney. And I told my wife, oh, I wish I had sent a letter just to put it out into the universe saying, thank you, Mr. Finney, you don't know who I am, but you have been a huge part of my life. I said, I wish I had sent him that letter. And my wife says, well, Sondheim is still alive, and he was at the time. And so I wrote a letter to Stephen Sondheim explaining exactly how it happened that I ended up being Iroh. Thinking, okay, you know, I put that into the universe, now I can just put a check mark and that I thanked him for that, you know, and it's out there. 3 weeks later, Stephen Sondheim wrote me back. And
Really?
literally, yeah, it was a card. It was clearly on an old typewriter, which I think I had read he liked to work with. And it was just a note card. It said, "Dear Greg, thank you much for your kind words. I'm glad the show had such a salubrious effect on your life." So immediately I'm looking up salubrious to find out if Stephen Sondheim had just dissed me, you know.
Right.
And then I found that it was a good word, and I'm going, well, only Stephen Sondheim is going to use a word like salubrious. So now that is literally, of all my, material possessions, I think I'm proudest of that letter, you know.
That's an incredible story. So Mr. Sondheim wrote you a nice letter.
He did indeed.
Yeah. So you auditioned for Avatar to replace Mako, or to fill the role. What was it like getting that call and being brought up?
You know, I'm sure you've all heard the old saying, when one door closes, another door opens. I was working for Disney Studios at the time. I worked for, as total, I think about 30 years in business and legal affairs there. I was the screen credits administrator. Well, that was my day job, which is a fancy way of saying I spell checked all the names in the credits. And I knew, I had already auditioned. My agent had sent me the sides and said, "Can you do, an impression of Mako? Here's his voice. Can you listen to it?" And I said, "Sure." And at the time he was still alive. I didn't even know he was sick. I just assumed that they were doing a video game or something he wasn't going to be available for. So I sent in my audition, and it's like, whoop. And then I was at my son at San Diego Comic-Con a couple of weeks later, and indeed it found out that he had passed away. So the next week, and this was within hours of each other, I had been with Disney 13 years, and they laid me off. And I think an hour or two later, I got the call from my agent saying, "Nickelodeon wants to see you personally. You're their #1 pick for the part." So, when that door closed, definitely another door opened. So you never know. The process, from that point on, I think I was at Nickelodeon like 3 times. And by the time I got to the last audition, I think there were probably 20 people in the booth. And the Nickelodeon execs and Mike and Brian and Andrea Romano. And I will never forget, I did the audition, and Andrea Romano says, "Okay, we're going to turn off the sound in the booth now because we're all going to be talking about you." And I literally could see all these people talking about me and hear them knowing, well, wow, this could change my life, or not. We'll see how it goes. And fortunately, it did end up, it ended up well. Thank you.
Spoiler alert, he got the job.
Yeah, I got the gig,
Yeah. Do you want to take some questions from the audience?
No math questions, please.
Okay.
Anything other than that, though? History questions I could do. Math, no. Yeah, anyone? What we
Be
got?
right there.
What's your favorite job you've done so far?
My favorite job?
Yeah.
Iroh. And the thing is, I've been blessed to voice some really cool characters and been involved with some really amazing franchises. But, I always say, Iroh and Avatar just in general has been such a force of positivity in the world, I can't think of another cartoon character that has done actual, real good in the world. When people will come up to me and they'll say, "I was going through a bad time and Iroh got me through it," or I didn't, get along with my father and Iroh was like a father. And I think there was one time, and this just devastated me. I was at one of these fan events, and this guy came up to me, big guy, and said that he had been a Marine and had been deployed in Afghanistan. And he was in search and rescue, and said everyone in his platoon, there was a picture of Uncle Iroh in their barracks. And before they went out, they would all touch Uncle Iroh's picture before they went out. And it's like, that is, to actually have, to be a force for good and positivity like that. I always say, Tom Kenny, probably one of the greatest voice actors working. He's the voice of SpongeBob. But I don't think anybody's come up to SpongeBob and go, "Wow, he was like my father, I learned so much from." Hey, I don't judge. What the heck, But Iroh, it happens all the time. And it's wonderful. Iroh does nothing. Iroh makes everyone a better version of themselves. From Zuko to the millions of fans to me, to his second voice actor. Having all of that Iroh wisdom and those lines memorized, I can't tell you how many times that's come in handy in my own life when I'm going through something. I always go back to my favorite quote is, If you look for the light, you will often find it. If you look for the dark, that is all you will ever see.
Right.
And that's the quote that anytime I'm having dark moments, you know, that's the quote that I always come back to. And the beauty of that line is, and the beauty of the writers, because the writers gave us these lines to say, in many ways it's just a more poetic way of saying be positive. But I think it's more than that, because it says if you look for the light, and I love the fact that there's an active choice involved. You have to look for the light. And once you make that decision to look for the light, you will see that the light, we're enveloped by the light. The light is everywhere. Even at night you can see the light up in the sky. So, you know, wow, man, mind blown.
Right.
But that I think that's why and there were so many wonderful lines, but that's the one that really sticks with me personally.
Yeah, Iroh is such an incredible character. So, do you feel any amount of pressure to protect this character, to the pressure of having this beloved character and you being the representative for him?
Yeah, absolutely. Now I do sometimes, especially when you come to my table, people love it when Iroh's language gets a little saltier. Because it's kind of funny to coming out of his mouth, you know. But Nickelodeon probably wouldn't like that. But yeah, I absolutely feel like I'm the caretaker of this part for now. And there are other Irohs. There will be many more Irohs, I think. Because I think this avatar is going to be around for a while. And yeah, I turned 63 2 weeks ago. It's prudent to start thinking about mortality at that age. And just recently it occurred to me that this show is so beloved and this show will outlast me. And that when I'm gone, my voice in this show will still be around. And I have to tell you, you know, that is a genuine source of comfort, you know. In my old age, as I start to contemplate death, not to bring everybody down.
Well, it's an incredible legacy. Do we have a question over here? Yes, sir.
What is your... You played Frank Fontaine in Bioshock. What is your favorite line as that character?
Would you kindly? The thing about Bioshock, and this is, they hired two actors. There was myself and Carl Hanover, and I found out much later, I think, that they did that on purpose because, you know, I don't want to give the spoiler alert away, but the game is pretty old, but there's a major spoiler in Bioshock, a major twist. And they didn't even want the actors to be aware of the twist, so they hired two actors. So when I was actually recording, I recorded Atlas as well as Frank Fontaine. And if you played the game, you know that Atlas he's an Irishman. He's an Irish fellow. Carl Hanover did that. And when I did the role, they had me do it like an old Texas boy. So it was like, would you kindly, would you kindly? And it would have been a very different game, I think, with that, with the Southern voice instead of the Iroh voice, the Irish voice, not the Iroh voice. Although it would have been weird that way too, you know. Would you kindly? Welcome to Rapture, my friends. You're going to die.
That'd be funny as hell.
We had a question over here. Yes, sir.
Yeah, trying to replace Mako, you know, I grew up as a kid watching him in Conan and Highlander and all these, you know, 80s movies and stuff. Was that intimidating to do to replace him?
Very much so. Very much so. I'm still aware of it, you know. When I first started voicing the role, I was 46, and Mako was 72, I think, when he passed. And I do find, I mean, when I listen to it, I hate listening to myself on the show, because I think, oh, I sound nothing like, how did I get the gig? But I do find that as my own, I'm 63, as my own vocal cords age, and I'm getting closer to the age he was when he was recording Iroh, I do find that it actually I'm actually getting older. It's starting to be more of a match. But as far as being intimidated by it, yeah, very much so. I've been a huge fan since 1977. And contrary to what you might hear, everything on the internet is not true.
I know, right?
What?
I know. The internet says that I was Mako's understudy, which, first of all, I never met him, you know. And I think it's hilarious that I would be his understudy, because an understudy is something only used in the theater. And say you have one actor who gets sick or he breaks his leg, he can't do the performance that night. So someone that looks like that actor, that he was specifically cast to look like that actor and sound like him, comes on instead. And, you know, if you saw Mako and I together, no one would replace, you know, clearly Mako and I look nothing alike. I would never be Mako's understudy. But I did meet his daughter and his grandson.
That's cool.
And it was I think it was the last recording session for Samurai Jack. And I went to Cartoon Network in Burbank and I signed in, and it was security. And someone ahead of me had signed in as Mako. And I'm like, well, that's a sick joke. What's up with that? That's really weird. And I go back into the green room, and Gendy Tartakovsky, who is the creator of Samurai Jack, said, hey, Greg, come here. There's somebody I want you to meet. This is Mako's daughter and Mako's grandson, who's also named Mako. And I'm going, well, Gendy, I wish you'd give me the heads up here, because this is a little intimidating. It's one thing to impersonate the voice of an iconic actor, but to impersonate the voice of someone's beloved father who's passed away is an entirely different matter. So I was kind of freaking out because I was afraid, what if she doesn't like it? Oh, you suck. But I went in and did the session, and Phil Lamar, who voices Samurai Jack, says the minute I started to speak, she leaned back in her chair and just sort of stared at the ceiling. And then we finished the session, and I came out of the booth, and she comes up to me, with tears in her eyes, gives me a hug. And she says, thank you so much. It was like he was in the room with us again. And of all the things I've ever done professionally or even just as a human, I think that afternoon means the most to me, because you can't help but relate such things to yourself. And I think about my own father. And I tell you, I would pay anything to hear even an imperfect impression of my own father's voice again. So the fact that I was able to give that to this family that has given me so much, that literally changed my life, was just literally, it was one of the greatest days of my life, I can't say the greatest, because that has to be the day I married my wife and when my children were born. So it would be number 4. Number 4. Solid number 4.
So, coming into Avatar: The Last Airbender, there is a pretty legendary voice cast already existing there. And I know that you did some work in the booth, and they are all kind of there and got to see you. But you've done a lot of cons since then, where you guys have done like reunions and you've gotten all together. Do you have any crazy stories about anything you've done with Dante Bosco or?
Well, the people think that when we were actually recording the show that we were all really tight, and everybody liked each other. But a recording session lasts an hour, hour and a half, then you go home. It's just a job. But when you do these fan conventions, especially as more and more they're trying to package us and do a reunion, we're all together. So we stay in the same hotels together, we drink together, we party together, and so we become much more cohesive as a group, more like a family, actually. I would say one of the nicest things is, Michaela, you would know her as Jessie Flower, who voices Toph. I never even met her at all when we were actually recording, but she started traveling with me a lot now, and it's a pretty good pairing, Toph and Iroh. And she's become like a family member. Literally, she's been to our house. When she comes to New Mexico on her way to Bucan, she will stay in our house with us. So that has been a nice side effect. As far as any stories, funny stories of stuff on the road,
Yeah.
I'm not going to share that.
Oh, okay.
Again, caretaker of Iroh.
Yeah, redacted.
Caretaker of
Redacted,
Iroh.
I get it. This young lady over here had a question.
Well, I think, like everybody else, my favorite scene is the Leaves from the Vine scene, I think. That's the scene that always gets me, and that was Mako, doing that. Which is why to this day, people still ask me to sing the song. And it's just, and I love fans, and I'm a very agreeable person, I'm an actor, I want you to love me, it's all acted. But I never sing the song, because it's a way of respecting his life and legacy. And I can't sing it as well, to be honest with you. I don't want to sully. So that would be my favorite moment in the show, of the moments that I personally recorded. Again, for the most part, I pretty much think I suck in the show. But I'm very fond of the scene where Zuko comes into the tent and asks for forgiveness. And Iroh says, I was never angry with you. I was sad because I thought you had lost your way. That is of my own work, I'm actually pretty proud of that scene. I think it turned out rather well. It even got me, and I knew it was coming. I recorded it. I even got a little misty when I saw it animated,
We got any more questions right here?
What did you as a person
The voice actor, Dante Bosco said that? In the show? Well, I sent the writer a very strongly worded letter. That's exactly, no. There are some things in the show that, the one thing about Iroh that really seems out of character to me is when he's talking about Azula and says she's crazy and needs to go down. Now, she is crazy, but it seems odd to me because Iroh is such a loving person and he loves his son, he loves his nephew. It just seems very out of character for him to say, no, this girl who clearly has severe psychological trauma, there's nothing we can do for her. She's crazy and needs to go down. And if I could get into a room with Mike and Brian, that would be one question that I would ask them. So what was up with that? It could very well be that she doesn't want to be helped. You have to want to be helped to be helped. And the other question I would ask him is, again, Iroh, very loving person. Not once in the show, not once is Mrs. Iroh discussed, alluded to, or mentioned. And it seems to me odd that someone like that, the Iroh, who's such a loving person, I mean, maybe it's too painful for him, I don't know, but I would love to say, Mike, Brian, what was up with that,
They are currently working on more Avatar.
They are?
Yeah, the Aang gang is they're a little older. Do you know that any of that is going to be explored?
You know what? We all know very, very little about the new animated, material.
Okay.
I know, as far as I know, none of us have been contacted to reprise our roles. Now, I don't know if that's going to stay or if, it might not. Hollywood is that's how it works. They replace you all the time. But I'm just looking forward to more content myself. Yeah. And I'm looking forward to the Netflix show. I think they learned from that other thing that didn't happen. There is no movie in Ba Sing Se. I think they've learned their mistakes from that. And I did have the great pleasure in Washington State. I got to hang out with Paul Sun-Hyun Lee, who plays Uncle Iroh in the Netflix adaptation. And based on the casting, based on some pictures that I've seen from the production, and based on Paul is such a good actor anyway, I think we're going to be okay. I don't think we're going to have a repeat of that other thing. The other thing, we can forget that ever happened. And the funny thing is, we were at this, I talk about this, at my table. We were at the same convention, and he was signing Iroh stuff as well. And we realized this is going to get really confusing for people because they don't know which Iroh's autograph they have. So we agreed that Mako Iroh Matsu is Iroh 1.0. I am Iroh 2.0. Paul is Iroh 3.0. And the actor that was in the movie that didn't happen, he can be Iroh 2.5 if he really wants to be.
So you and Paul share another interesting crossover in that you both have been part of Star Wars.
Indeed. One of my non-Mako roles, I am proudest of my work on Clone Wars, specifically Jedi Master Terra Sinupe, who helps Ahsoka find her lost lightsaber, if you remember that particular episode. And this is a scoop, this is a voice acting trick. This is the voice of Terra Sinupe. But if you go back and you watch the first two Harry Potters, where Richard Harris is still playing Dumbledore, you will know exactly where I stole his voice from. And by the way, Michael Gambon just passed away as well. The second Dumbledore did. So
yeah,
rest in peace.
Yeah. It was Picasso who said, "Good artists borrow, great artists steal."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And actually, one of I learned this lesson, and I was very lucky because I got to see him last week. Johnny Bravo, Jeff Bennett, Johnny Bravo, Dexter's father. He had so much work. Wonderful, wonderful voice actor. And we used to compete against each other in speech tournaments in Texas back in the mid-'70s. And then we went to college together. And then last week was the first time I was ever at an event with Jeff. So it was, two old guys talking about the good old days. But Jeff is the one who told me, because Johnny Bravo was essentially just doing, he's doing Elvis Presley. That's all you were doing. And he's the one that's sort of, there's no shame in that.
Yeah.
Because sometimes it's exactly the right choice is by doing an impression of someone else, which has ended up being my whole gig, actually, now that I think about it. It's not surprising at all.
So we had another question over here. Yes, sir?
I would love to see that. The Iroh's redemption arc, to me, I think would be just as impactful as Zuko's. And indeed, I was talking to a fan, and I thought this was such a profound way of putting it. Because we were talking about Zuko's redemption arc, and and how the Iroh that laid siege to Ba Sing Se is not the Iroh that will sit and have tea with you and is this calming, loving person. He was a very different man. And, it said that Liu Ten's death, spoiler alert, if you don't know by now, it changed him. But this fan said it wasn't just that. That was not Iroh's redemption arc. Zuko is Iroh's redemption arc. And when you think about it, that makes sense. That's how he was able to atone for his own sins, by taking this young man and forming him into the Fire Lord that particular world needed at that time, a kinder and gentler Fire Lord, if you will. And that makes sense. Zuko is Iroh's redemption arc. I love it. I should have t-shirts printed up. Love it.
We got any more questions in the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Well, this is, I tweeted this one time and I couldn't believe the pushback. I think Azula reserves a redemption arc. So I would agree with you on that. I think it's distinctly possible that someone, including Grey Delilah herself, thinks, some people should just be bad because they're bad. And I was amazed because there very much was the pushback on that. No, just let her be a villain because she's a villain. But she is 14 years old and she has severe psychological damage, And if they could have given an Emmy for voice acting work, and they should, Grey should have won it, for the scene where she just breaks down at the end, I think that's just my personal opinion. Yes, I think Azula is kinder than people give her. I think there's a kernel in there of something good, a kernel of goodness still in her.
We got any more questions in the audience? Yes, sir.
So jumping off the main characters of Avatar, that idea, this all the little side characters that keep popping up and appearing here and there and there. Which is your favorite of those?
Well, I'm sitting next to King Boomy this week, which is pretty awesome. Yeah. Well, just like someone that just pops up.
Yeah, just like maybe like one or two episodes.
Well, I think I voiced Combustion Man. I think that was one of mine, actually. I don't think he said mine. And again, I don't think he would say, but the Cabbage Merchant. Come on, man, the Cabbage Merchant. Give it up for the Cabbage Merchant, man. Come on. The funniest thing, and we've signed a lot of weird stuff, as you can imagine. But the funniest thing we ever signed, they brought us actual cabbages to sign. And we thought it was so funny because, first of all, you realize these signatures are going to be rotten, in a week or so. And it turns out that writing on a cabbage is more difficult than you would imagine. Sort of wet, The Sharpies don't do very well, but it made us laugh so hard, It's like, yeah.
We got any more questions out here? Yes, sir.
Would you continue doing Avatar if you could?
You bet I would. I would not think twice about it. Again, apart from my wife and my children, the greatest blessing in my life has been voicing this particular. I've had a wonderful career, but this particular character has just been a great blessing to me. And it has definitely made me a kinder and gentler person because of my proximity to the role. And my wife, the nicest thing, and she said many nice things to me over the years, but I was talking to her and I said, isn't it funny that I'm famous for being this uncle character, And I have only one natural nephew. I literally have just one, no nieces, just one nephew. And my wife says, Craig, you got millions of nieces and nephews. And that is the thing about this character. And I thought about it, and I kind of feel like I do, if that sounds a little weird. And I think going back, yeah, that's kind of why I feel like I am the caretaker of this role. Because this role is so important to people in their real lives. He's been such a force of good. And, you know, if I can just do a fraction of that amount of good in the time I have left, then I can count myself lucky indeed. Yes?
I actually have a question. So I've been listening to Braving the Elements with Dante and Janet Varney, and Dante always talks about how when you came in to do the first recording of Iroh after Mako was cast, obviously, they said that you were in like the solo booth.
I was in a solo booth. Everyone else was together.
Yeah, and so they heard you and just started like bawling because they were so moved by hearing your voice. But like, what's on the other side of that? Like, how did you feel?
I was terrified.
Yeah.
I was absolutely terrified. I thought I was going to be fired at any. Again, I'm coming in. I had done some work, but mainly at that point in my life, I was a screen credits administrator for Disney. I laid off screen credits administrator at that point. I think I was looking for another job. So I was just so amazed to be in this room with Mae Whitman, you know, and Dante Bosco, and Jack the Senya, and Gray Delisle. It's like, what am I doing here? I don't belong here. So yeah, I was terrified. I still have to pinch myself sometimes. It's like, how can this be? This is how I get to spend my twilight years? This is fantastic. I love it. So, but yeah, very, very terrifying. And the thing is, the cast, they were all so nice to me. They were so kind. Again, because I knew I'm coming in and I'm not just replacing an actor. Mako was their friend. They knew him personally. This, you know, they were affected by his passing. So it meant so much to me that they've always been so kind to me and so nice to me and so welcoming to me. And now I'm finally to the point where if I'm at a table with all of them, I can go, okay, I guess I belong here. I don't think they're going to come and kick me out. I think I belong here a little bit. But yeah, lovely people, absolutely lovely people.
So speaking of your earlier career, you started out in the theater, and you played some pretty significant roles. You played Mushnik in Little Shop of Horrors.
How would you like to be my son? How would you like to be my own adopted boy? Mr. Mushnik, Little Shop. My kids were very little. The first time I did the show, my kids were little. I think my son was like 4. And they were going to, it was the first time they had ever seen their dad in a show. And I remember taking them up to the theater one night when it was dark because I wanted them to understand that Dad wasn't actually getting eaten alive by a plant on stage. So I let him crawl into the puppet and say, this is how it happens. The guy's going to open his mouth. I'm going to crawl under his legs through the stage. And it was kind of a good memory, and I think for my kids too. Definitely an actor memory, you know. Everyone's dad doesn't do that, no? Isn't it by a plant? I don't know. What's up with that?
I played Seymour in Little Shop in high school.
Seymour, how would you like to be my son? Do it again.
I don't remember it.
Oh, come on, man.
But,
Down on Skid Row.
yeah. I know that part.
Suddenly Seymour standing beside me.
That was pretty good too.
Yes, I played Audrey as well.
But coming from a theater background, do you bring any of that theater discipline to your roles?
Absolutely. I mean, I'm an old man, and I am a little old school this way. I think if you're going to be an actor, at least get on a stage at least once. I mean, and there are some that say, you know what, because movie acting is a very, very different matter. It's a very different matter. But there's something about being on stage and depending on your fellow actors and how every night is different. And the audience itself is an actor. Because, you know, you can get a huge laugh one night and you go, I'm going to do that line exactly the same the next night. And, you know, it's crickets. And having to learn to deal with that, having to learn to deal with, like, one of your fellow actors forgets a line. I never really played team sports, but it sort of is like a sport. It is like you're a team when you're on stage. And so honestly, I wish I could do more theater now, but I come and do these things now, so it's really hard to do theater. And the older I get, there aren't that many parts for me anymore, you know? Grandfather, that's about it. Grandpa.
Maybe Fiddler on the Roof.
You know, Tevye, I'm probably about 10 or 15 years too old for Tevye, but I think I could pull it off. A fiddler on the roof. Sounds crazy, no. But here in our little village of Anatevka, you might say every one of us is a fiddler on the roof. I think I can pull it off. If I were a rich man. Anyway.
You got the pedigree for sure.
I got the body for it, definitely. You know, I can get it shaken.
Let's take some more questions out here. Yes, sir.
So you voice both Uncle Iroh and Aku, who are both on like complete opposite ends of the moral spectrum. Do you have a preference for when voicing? Do you have a preference for like good guys or bad guys, or you just all in?
Well, the villains are always the most fun. Always are the most fun. Aku is by far the most fun to play. But Aku was harder to play. And again, this was the genius of Mako. Iroh is very zen. He is very much on one level. Whereas Aku is all over the place. He's here and there. And the beauty of Mako is Mako could go from terrifying to funny like that. And the transitions with Aku were sometimes a little more problematic for me because they're just so fast. And he does have to be terrifying and hilarious at the same time, which is, you know, an odd sort of, you know, combination. And Mako got it just, you know, just right. I struggled with that just, you know, a little bit.
So you also voiced Master Splinter in one of my favorite Ninja Turtle movies of all time. What was that like?
It was weird because it was another. Mako had just passed away, and they called me, I think, because they heard, oh, the Nickelodeon hired this guy. Let's see if he can do it. It ended up, Mako is credited as Splinter. The reality is probably about 75-80% of it is me. And so sometimes when people will bring me Splinter merch to sign, and it's like, you know what? I don't feel like I can sign it as Splinter. I was not credited as Splinter. Mako wasn't. It was his last credited role, so I sure don't want to step on that. So I'll sign it, Greg Baldwin, Splinterish. Splinterish, sort of Splinter. Because I'm not really Splinter, so yeah, Splinterish, you know.
Yeah. So in the newest Ninja Turtles movie, Jackie Chan voices Master Splinter, and Mako and Jackie Chan did a lot of films together. He played his uncle quite a few times. Have you ever met Jackie Chan?
No, and but you know what? If I had had my choice, when we were just gaming out, I think I even said on social media, I think Jackie Chan wouldn't have been a bad choice for Uncle Iroh, actually. You know, because he has a sense of humor. He has the perfect match, and he has a sense of humor for it.
Yeah.
But you also know this is someone that when he can get very badass very quickly, which is Iroh. You know, which is getting back to the film that must not be named. That's one of the things that bothered me. And Sean Tube, who played Iroh, was a great actor. It wasn't his fault. But I think it's important that Iroh be fat. I really think so, because that is his whole thing. He's very loving and kind and come, let us share tea together, until you press him too far, and then he is incredibly dangerous. And I think that's the point. You can't have him. He needs to be fat because it needs to be a surprise.
Yeah. When
you find out that this is a serious man to be reckoned with, you know. And I don't like to brag, but you know, Buff Iroh, you know, when he breaks up, the animators did, you know, use my own torso as the model. I know, now it's obvious. Now you know. Now you know.
Let's take some more questions from the crowd. Anybody else got more questions? Yes, sir.
So I know in like Star Wars voice right, do you prefer doing multiple characters or do you like stick with one throughout?
You know what I like to do? I like to work, period. Multiple characters is kind of fun. One of the things that was fun about Clone Wars is I guessed it enough, and I voiced so many different characters on there. It was kind of funny, though. I think I voiced a character called, I think it was not Serapis. I can't remember what his name was. But he was a farmer on some planet. And I knew he was a farmer. I said, what's a farmer sound? Well, if this sounds like a farmer, I'm going to go in with this voice. I'm a farmer. And I went in, and Dave Filoni goes, you know, yeah, that's great. That's a great voice. Can you do Mako, please? And then, okay, I think I can do that. You're the boss, Mr. Filoni, whatever you say. The cool thing about, I have been so fortunate because I have gotten to work with Dave Filoni and Mike and Brian and Gendy Tartakovsky and the Coen brothers. I mean, I have really been able to work with some of the greatest geniuses in the business. And, you know, they're kind of lucky, you know. Kind of pretty cool.
And can we talk about the Coen Brothers film?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, can we? I don't even know.
I
now
don't
that
know.
I think about it, I don't think we can.
Okay,
Because
never
of the
mind.
strike. But I don't think we can.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, let's not
That's
get
the
you in
fir-
any trouble.
No, that's the first time that ever occurred to me. Because generally, most of us here all work under the cable animation contract. So that's why most of us can do whatever we want, even at the Comic-Cons, because we're not really under that theatrical contract. Now, for example, The Simpsons or The Family Guy or anything that airs on network television is. So that's why they can't talk about it or promote it in any way. But yeah, that's the first time I've run into that. I guess, wow, please, SAG, I didn't mean to. Please don't. Hello, with the SAG police, come with us.
Yeah.
No, I forget that I was never in a Coen Brothers movie. I've never been in a live-action movie in my life. Never.
I was really hoping they were gonna wrap all the strike stuff up before this weekend because it was so close. But that's okay.
Soon, I think. Soon.
Yeah,
With the
yeah.
Now that the writers are settled, I think, it won't be too long. I literally had somebody call me up and say, Mr. Baldwin, we're interested, we represent yada yada, we're interested in cloning your voice. Is that something you'd like to do? And I'm like, I very politely told them, why would I sign my own pink slip?
Yeah.
Why would I do that? It's a little frightening. Someone had sent me a link to something on YouTube, and it was Mako. It was a song from Coco. Remember me, but the sad version. And they had cloned Mako's voice singing that song. And I have to say, it was well done, and it was very sad. Very much in the Leaves from the Vine, genre. But I said, this is an abomination, man. This is terrible. Literally, if you love Mako, hey, don't steal his voice, without his permission. And for me, that is the greatest danger as a voice actor. Because, literally, if they had AI technology in 2006, a computer would be sitting up here. Because that's who would have voiced the Iroh since 2006. So, yeah, I'm again it. I'm again it, as we say down Texas way.
Yeah.
Anyone here from Texas?
Anyone from Texas?
Anyone here from New Mexico? Anyone here from California? I've lived in a lot of places. I've never lived in Missouri, though. My first time here. It's lovely.
I'm from Chicago.
Chicago? I've been to Chicago. I think now since we started doing these conventions, I've I've been everywhere, man. I've been everywhere.
All right, we got time for a couple more questions before Mr. Baldwin heads back to his table. Anybody got a question out here? Yes, ma'am.
Oh, heavens. I run. Is it my dream role? Oddly enough, this will surprise you, and I could never do it. It is a stage role. I would love to play Sweeney Todd. And I'm too old and fat to play Sweeney Todd, so it's never going to happen. But it's right in my range, and I would love to play that particular part. But I'd be the judge. I would be the judge if I ever did that show again. Not as much fun. At last, my arm is complete again. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, that was really good.
I'm like, ooh, great, that sounded good.
So what is your range? Just curious.
Baritone.
Baritone.
Baritone, yeah. And I can go reasonably high, but not too high.
Okay.
And you will find, and I think it's because we're voice actors, most voice actors can sing too. Most of us do. And I think it's just because of the lyrical, the voice is an instrument too. So it just makes sense that most of us can also sing. We should do an Avatar choir. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Actually, there has been an Avatar musical, and indeed, you go online. I actually sang in it. This very Catherine Lynn Rose is her name, I think. Very, very talented young composer, and she had done an unauthorized Avatar musical. And if you go on YouTube, look up Balance. The song is Balance. Avatar musical, you will find it. It's amazing. There's a huge cast singing it, orchestra, and indeed I am singing Iroh in that particular, musical number. Balance, it's called on YouTube. It was kind of fun. I love music. I could talk about musicals all. I should go to a musical con.
Yeah. Do they have those?
I'm sure they do.
Do they have those?
I bet they do in New York.
We should have one.
There should be one. You
Yeah.
know? And oddly enough, you know, the Venn diagram of people that like fan conventions and this, and also love musicals, it's actually quite a bit of an overlap, you know.
Yeah.
I was a theater kid, but a proud theater kid, very proud.
So we got time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
We all have to know if you could choose what element to make. It doesn't have to be fire.
Greg Baldwin would be an airbender. I've always been sort of, I've always been very captivated by notions of spirituality in various forms, and I'm just, you know, I'm kind of a little more in my head, a little more airy, you know. I think probably that would be my bending. And also, you know, I'm also an elbow bender, as you will, you know. I do a little elbow bending now and then. But I only drink tea. Tequila, thank you very much. I'm here all week, folks. Tequila.
Well, Greg, thank you for taking the time to sit with us and talk to us today. It has been an absolute pleasure.
I love it. Thank you very much. Thank you all very much. As much as I love voice acting, I love this even more. I love meeting everybody and seeing your faces and having the human connection after the last few years that we've had has just been a blessing. So thank you all very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Greg. Give it up for Greg Baldwin!